And it is precisely that which Congress this week is poised to reject in a non-binding resolution. I submit to you today that if the Iraq Study Group is to be cited again and again by the majority as source authority and a font of wisdom, and I believe it is, then let's be clear about the recommendations of the Iraq Study Group. It is not to say, Mr. Speaker, that a short-term redeployment or surge of combat forces in Baghdad will solve the present crisis and impasse that we face. It simply is a strategy to quell violence with Iraqis in the lead to create the conditions of stability whereby a long-term political solution can be achieved. Now let me say, Mr. Speaker, it was my great hope that the resolution before us today would have come to the floor under procedural rules that allowed for amendments. For my part, I spent much of last evening offering an amendment along with others that would state that it is the sense of Congress that we should not take any action that would result in the elimination or reduction of funds for our troops. I rise today not to complain about procedure, but to say, Mr. Speaker, I regret that this newly minted majority could not do as the Democrat chairman of the Senate Armed Services appears prepared to act. My amendment that was offered, similar to others, has nearly identical language to a resolution being offered by the distinguished Senator Levin, the chairman of the Armed Services Committee. And both of us agree that Congress should affirmatively state that it will not cut funding to the troops. And I deeply regret that we were not able to make that declarative of a statement today. And let me say, with great respect to the chairman of this Armed Services Committee, who needs not to hear from me about the deep respect I have for him, that I have to believe that somewhere in his heart of hearts, knowing his extraordinary record of service to this country, that he may well have hoped for a stronger statement as well. While the Democrat resolution before us expresses the hope that Congress and all Americans will continue to support and protect our brave men and women serving in Iraq, it does not take the next step to show tangible support for our troops in the nature of funding. And let me say this with great sincerity. There is a fundamental difference between pledging to support and protect our troops and pledging not to cut off the funding for our war in Iraq. It is a specious distinction, and one that is not lost on our colleagues in the Senate. I would submit to you that words have consequences, and support and protect does not assure the American people that we will continue to fund our troops in the field. And I believe the American people understand this point, Mr. Speaker. A poll cited this morning in USA Today shows that even though a majority of Americans are opposed to the surge of troops in Baghdad, a majority also oppose cutting off funding for the troops. The American people do not want Congress to defund this war, in the majority, even if they're concerned about the course and direction the war is taking. And Congress should tell the troops and the American people that it will never use the power of the purse to accomplish policy ends in the field of battle. With this I close. Listening to this debate today and to the opposition to the surge being espoused by the Democrat majority, I have begun to wonder a very simple question. What if it works? I've made it clear that I support the surge and the President's new strategy. My good friends on the Democrat side of the aisle, and as has been said, some Republicans, have made it clear that they oppose the surge. of forces in Iraq. And that is their right, and if it is in their heart, it is their duty. And at this moment, it appears that a majority of Americans are with the majority in this Congress. But what if? What if they're wrong? What if you're wrong? What if the surge and the new leadership of General Petraeus and the courage and bravery of American men and women in uniform and the sacrifices of Iraqis in uniform succeeds in the coming months? You know, it's a snow day back in Indiana today, Mr. Speaker, and my kids are even home watching this on TV. I give my kids some pretty basic advice sometimes, and one of the pieces of advice I give my kids when they're facing challenges, I say to them, you know, if people don't like losers, but they like quitters even less. And I think we ought to reflect on that old maxim as we come upon this decision today. If this new strategy in Iraq succeeds in the coming months, what will those who vote for this resolution say? The truth is we must fight and win a victory for freedom in Iraq. The truth is we have no option but victory. In their hearts, the American people know this, and the American people are willing to make the hard choices to choose victory. Courage. Courage is the key in this moment. C.S. Lewis wrote that, quote, courage is not simply one of the virtues, but the form of every virtue at the testing point. Courage, then, is the answer. Not recrimination and retreat. We are at a moment when the American people and the members of this body will take a stand. This is a moment for courage. Our brave men and women in Iraq exhibit courage and uncommon valor every day. And it is my hope and prayer that us in this house might follow their lead and show them that such courage resides here as well. Let's vote down this resolution and find it within ourselves to lead the American people by bringing forward the resources and the support necessary to see freedom win in Iraq. And I yield back.